What's up, everybody? Thanks for tuning in to another episode of Niners News here on 49ers Hive. My name is Zach Hernandez. You can follow me on Twitter, my handle below. I'm joined always by my friend Matt Llewellyn. Matt, how you doing?
I'm doing great, man. Same thing. Follow me down below. Follow 49ers Hive for the best of 49ers content. Let's get it started.
Yes, sir. So without further ado, we're going to get right into it. Last week, Matt, big news, 2020 NFL schedule came out. What did you think of the 49ers schedule? Just kind of quick thoughts.
They got a huge break. It's one of those things where a lot of people are worried about a Super Bowl hangover, and the way that the schedule broke, it looks like that's not even going to be a thing. You know, we're playing the AFC West this year as far as our out of conference, and you're looking at road games at the Jets, at the Patriots. Awesome for us because both of those games take place in the warmer months of the year. We also play the New York Giants at New York. So back to back, week 2, week 3, New York. They're going to stay there most likely. Kyle will have them booked up there. That won't be a problem. Patriots are going to take a huge step back with Tom Brady leaving, and we've got all our cold weather games out just, right before anything can happen as far as terrible weather. It's not like we're going to, be in New England in December where it could be a snow thing and could potentially slow us down. The only tough part of the schedule is, I believe, going week 10 into Green Bay. It's going to be a short week. I believe that's a Thursday night game. But conversely, after that, we get 10 days between the Packers and the Saints. So we have to travel to New Orleans, but there's a longer prep time for that. And given what we've done to the Packers, I think the schedule breaks out for us very well. I believe I was reading somewhere that the 49ers have a 4th place schedule. If you're looking at like what the actual difficulty of schedule is, we have one of the easier ones in the league. There's going to be no crazy super back-to-back travel days in there. And it's one of those where it broke perfectly for this team to make another run at the Super Bowl.
Yeah, I mean, and I think the thing that you touched on the most that I agree with most is that the East Coast kind of colder weather games are earlier on in the year. The 49ers don't have to worry about going into snow or crazy amounts of rain. So that definitely helped the 49ers there. I thought that it was interesting. I know it's preseason, but I still think it's interesting that the 49ers are facing the Raiders. That hasn't happened in years, right?
Yeah, it hasn't happened in a long time. That was mainly because there were altercations between fans going back and forth to those games. They used to play in the preseason every year, and it would alternate between Oakland and San Francisco. I think the league thinks that by the Raiders leaving Oakland and moving to Las Vegas, they're going to be able to mitigate that. I think that's only going to be true when San Francisco goes to Oakland for the preseason, because there's still going to be Las Vegas. There's still going to be a lot of Raider fans in Oakland that will go to Santa Clara to, watch that game. There could still be potential issues, but I do agree. It's been a surprise. The real thing is going to be if any games are held in California. I know there's been talk with, the coronavirus and all that stuff, that the league has a contingency plan for all of the California teams if Governor Newsom decides that, hey, there's going to be no sports played here. And in that instance, I believe the 49ers would actually play in Glendale at the Cardinals Stadium. So I know that it's rumored that the Rams and the Chargers would actually go to Allegiant in Las Vegas and play there. So we could potentially get 48 regular season games in Las Vegas for the first year of that stadium. But if everything goes to plan and everybody can go where they're supposed to go, their home stadiums and everything, it is going to be interesting to see how that first preseason game between the Raiders and the 49ers will go, considering the league kind of put the kibosh on that after so many kind of incidences between the two.
Yeah, I remember the last time there was that like brutal like stabbing or something like that.
Yeah.
It was crazy. And I've been to 2 Battles of the Bay myself, and you do see a lot of hectic things go on there. Hopefully things, like you said, get better now that the Raiders will be out of the Bay Area. It won't be as kind of brutal and harsh of a rivalry, which is funny because if you think about it, the 49ers and Raiders, there's no game rivalry there. It's not like the 49ers and Seahawks.
Yeah.
It's
It's
just
more
people.
geographical gang rivalry. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
It's the unfortunate aspect of, fan is short for fanatic, and when you're into your team, you're into your team. And there are instances where that carries into real life, and it's unfortunate. And I do think it's important that these two teams can kind of, meet with each other, because that it just tells me that these two teams like working with each other and like kind of seeing where the other one is. And a lot of times the rivalries are between mostly the fans of those two teams. It's not necessarily some. We all know that players are really friendly nowadays, and player movement is such a big thing that nobody stays on one team for too long. Nobody has allegiance for too long. It's more about the colors you wear in the place where you live, and that can lead to some ugly things. So hopefully, with this being reinstated between the Raiders and the 49ers, hopefully we can keep it a little bit more civil so that we don't have to kind of, go away from that again.
Yeah. Now, Matt, there's one game on the schedule that I know for sure one 49er has scheduled with, permanent marker 1,000 times, and that's week 7 in New England. How do you think that game shapes out for the 49ers?
I think it's going to play out really well. No matter what anybody in New England is going to tell you, no matter what Bill Belichick is going to talk really robotically about. It Listen, you can't get rid of somebody like Tom Brady and not expect to drop off. Tom Brady to Jared Stidham is going to be something that's just, you can't just overcome that in a couple weeks. And Stidham is going to be in for a long, long day. It's not like that New England offensive line is anything special. And you're looking at one of the best pass rushes in the league. You're looking at a guy who, granted, he's going to be in his second year, but he hasn't really seen any game action. So what is he really going to know? I think it's prime target for the 49ers and Robert Saleh to feast on that New England offense. And I would expect that would be honestly one of the easier games of the season. And I hate to, you don't want to be Nostradamus too much and put too much out there, but reading the tea leaves is kind of like, this is going to be a down year for New England, and the 49ers are going to kind of beat up on those teams that are a little bit lesser.
Yeah, I totally agree 100%. I think that Jimmy Garoppolo, obviously, this game would have been a lot better if Tom was still in New England. However, he's still, that's where he came into the NFL. That's where he began his career, probably where he hoped to finish his career. And they sent him packing. So I think that he has a
Yep.
lot to prove. He probably has a chip on his shoulder as it is, especially going into New England and Foxborough. And I think that he's probably going to have one of the best games of his career, to be honest with you. Now,
Yeah.
another,
And
go ahead.
I just want to say, that game looks like it's going to be one of the easier ones. The one game, there are games to concern you though. And I think that the one game, and I'm sure that you will kind of acknowledge, if not outright agree, the one game that looks the toughest is going to be at New Orleans. I mean, that game was a knockdown, drag out affair last year. New Orleans is returning a ton of talent, and it's going to be hard to go in there 2 years in a row and kind of like try to pull one out. I feel like that's the one game where it's just like, that's a tough ask, and you hope they can go in there and do it. You hope that maybe Sean Payton overlooks some things that, doesn't adjust the way that he should, because we know Kyle's going to adjust. But I think going into New Orleans 2 years in a row is kind of a big ask. And I think for them, that's probably the hardest game on the schedule. What do you think is for you? What is the hardest game on the schedule for them?
Okay, now, totally, I agree. New Orleans is going to be tough. I think that, the 49ers may luck out, Father Time chipping away at Drew Brees' talent and just his strength.
Mm,
And, he's still going to be one of the smartest quarterbacks. However, we've seen quarterbacks, no matter how smart you are, your body starts to wear. I think that they will have a better chance just because of that, just because of age. But a tough game for me, and I know people are probably going to think that I'm crazy, but I'm looking at week 16 going to Arizona.
okay.
I think that's going to be a tough game. The 49ers and Cardinals played each other really, really well last year. The 49ers were in prime position to lose both games. That game at home, if it wasn't for a last second, pass to Jeff Wilson, excuse me, they would have lost that game. And I know that they did
Yep.
everything they could to come back. However, they played really, really poorly in the first half of that game. And then the Halloween game, they were going chip for chip kind of the whole game. And they
Yeah.
start off the season at home against the Cardinals. I think that that's going to be kind of an early litmus test of where the Cardinals are already, because like I said, they played the 49ers really well last season. And then they finish up two division games the season, 16, 17. at Cardinals, and they come home to finish the season against Seattle. So I think that's going to be a tough game. We were talking last week, or excuse me, last episode about how the quarterbacks match up in the NFC West. We all agreed Kyler's kind of at least at Jimmy, if not a smidge above Jimmy.
Right.
What do you think of that? Do you think the 49ers have a lot to handle when they face the Cardinals?
I do. I think the game that really is going to be the trip up, though, is going to be the opening game, week one.
Okay.
And that's because a young team does well when there's nothing, when there's no lingering momentum. So I think a young team is really susceptible to the ebbs and the flows of a season. So when you get really hot, a young team will get really hot. When a young team gets cold, they get really cold. So depending on how it shakes out, week 16 could come. Arizona could be out of it and then not looking to really, their heart's not in it or whatever. Everybody's amped up for opening day, and I think those young teams can really catch people off guard. I think a lot of upsets happen in week one. We've seen it in the past, and this could be a thing of where if the 49ers aren't careful, Arizona could come into Levi's Stadium and take one right off the bat and then leave the 49ers kind of reeling and, looking at themselves like, wow, what just happened? So if they're not careful, I think week one is actually the more dangerous game for them just because it's like, oh, well, 49er complacency. Look, we just came off the Super Bowl. The schedule looks good. We're going to get there. Everybody looks good. We got Brandon Ayuk. We got, we replaced everything that we lost. We got Javon Kinlaw. We got all these pieces, getting our guys back healthy. Jimmy's going to grow, everything, and they come in a little bit too big for their britches.
Right.
And that's when you get caught, so week one is, to me, is the Arizona game that's really going to be the test, more so than week 16.
Okay. I mean, I could see that. Starting off the season, like you said, a lot of expectations, a lot of energy. And if they come out and get hit in the mouth right away, I mean, all that matters is their response. Are they prepared for it? Are they ready to answer right back and keep going tat for tat? So it's going to be really interesting. But I think the Cardinals, like we've said in the last episode, they're going to be a tough test for the 49ers. And it looks like they're not going anywhere. So they better start to get used to them. Now, Matt,
it's coming.
Yeah. Now, Matt, the 49ers saw the Packers twice last year, and they just spanked them both times.
Packers got nothing for them this year. It's not going to be any different.
That's my question for you. Week 9, there's a game on NFL Network, on Amazon Prime, nationally televised game. Is it going to be any better of a matchup than it was last year in both games?
No, and I think it'll be even worse. You're looking at turmoil in Green Bay. Aaron Rodgers is not going to be happy. Aaron Rodgers has a chapped ass from what they did in the draft. Aaron Rodgers is not going to be happy. That thing has a chance to collapse in on itself very quickly. And they didn't do anything to improve the deficiencies that the 49ers were able to take care of. I mean, what did they do? They didn't listen. Raheem Mostert was able to get 186 yards before contact in the NFC Championship game last season. They didn't do anything to address any of the positions of need that could slow that down. So if I'm Kyle Shanahan, I'm just like, well, we're going to feed the ball to our running backs and play physical football with them because they're not going to be able to do anything about it. And you have maybe potentially Aaron Rodgers at the beginning of the season has a fire lit under him and he plays really well. But when you're talking about week 9, man, playing angry all the time, that's not sustainable. And it's going to be something where there's going to be a lot, that anger and that motivation is going to turn into resentment and tension over the course of the season. And by the time that they get to us, they might be done.
Yeah. When they were drafting, I was cracking up when they traded up to take Jordan Love. My first thought was, is he going to fill those holes on the defensive line? Is he going to hit running backs going through your porous defense? It's just, it's really hilarious.
Right.
I agree. I don't think that the Packers have any answer. Like you said, I think they got worse, if anything, at least matching up with the 49ers from last year to this year. Now, last year we saw, Matt, the 49ers kind of drop one to the Falcons, letdown game. They were just coming off that really, really tough 3-game stretch. Yeah. Which game on the schedule do you see that could be that letdown game this year?
It's hard to say at this point. I think there's a few games, and it's a thing of like where the schedule can break any different number of ways, and if you're not careful, any game could be that game. I think there's a couple games that are really important. That back to back. You have Packers, and then you go to the Saints. That's a really tough 2-game stretch. And then after that, they get a bye week, but then they go to the Rams. I don't think that they drop that one there, but I think the potential one that they could really, really drop is the Monday night game versus Buffalo. You got a good
Okay.
couple of weeks where, again, Packers on short week after you face the Seahawks. Then you have when you go to Seattle on November 1st, Packers November 5th at home. Then you travel to New Orleans, and then you get Rams in Los Angeles. But then after that, you get a Monday night game at home against the Bills. And I think just after just beat down after beat down after beat down, the Bills defense is very physical. The offense isn't anything to write home about, but the defense could, after all of those different teams, I mean, Packers have a good offense, Saints have a good offense. Rams, when they're dialed in, they have a good offense, even though the 49ers have shown a propensity to stop them. That's 3 straight weeks of opponents that have really good offenses. And you get to the point where you face a physical team like the Bills, you're in danger of maybe dropping one. And I wouldn't necessarily say that that's a trap game. I don't think it's something that, people would be super upset if the 49ers lost. But it is a game that I really do worry about just because of the physical aspect of the Bills defense.
Okay, that's going to be a tough game for sure. Just how you laid it out, especially after that stretch that they go on and nationally televised, there's a lot of pressure. I'm going to say, I think that, to be honest with you, I think that week 4, that Sunday night
Okay.
game at home against the Eagles, I think that's going to
Mhm.
be a tough game for them. I mean, they got 2 weeks back to back on the East Coast. They're coming back, a lot of travel. And the Eagles are a tough team. They made the playoffs last year. I know a lot of people kind of joke at them. They don't have any talent wide receiver. Carson Wentz is always beat up, but I do think they're a talented team. And not only that, they have a very, very, talented defensive line as well. And I think that they probably match up well with the 49ers. So if I see any sort of kind of letdown, and I don't even know if you could classify that as a letdown as a team, that made the playoffs last year, but I think the
Right.
Eagles could be that sort of game. Um, and I think that the 49ers need to come prepared because they're fighting for their lives in the NFC East as well. And the NFC East has been up for grabs, seems like the last 2 to 3 years. So there's really no
Agreed.
clear-cut favorite.
Agreed.
Now,
Agreed.
we're gonna wrap things up here, guys. Matt, what do you think? Final thoughts on the schedule? What do you want to give a season prediction record wise?
Um, I thought 11-5, 12-4 is a realistic prediction. I'm going to stick with that. I think the schedule broke in a way that favors the 49ers. So, there's schedule, once the schedule comes out, it can go one of two ways. It could either be you do really well for yourself or you have a really tough time. And the 49ers, unlike last year, where I feel like they had a really tough schedule, this year I feel like it's a lot more advantageous for them to make another run at the Super Bowl. So I would lean more towards 12-4 and another NFC West championship.
Okay, I like that. I was actually thinking when I was going through the games, I tallied up 12-4 as well, and I do think they win the NFC West. I think that we gave our rankings last week, guys. So if you missed that, go check out the previous episode where we ranked the
The
NFC
only
West
thing that I
team.
would say is that it seems that Kyle is really in love with a running back by committee sort of thing. So Mostert had 772 yards last year. It was like a 5.6 yards per carry clip. He got less than 150 carries. So I don't think that the numbers will come up, but I don't think they're going to be drastic. I think maybe he'd get 175 carries. I don't think that he's going to be that bell cow back you're looking for. So I think somewhere in the range of 800 to 900 yards is going to be kind of the ceiling for him just because of how much Kyle is in love with not only Tevin Coleman and the other running backs they have, but you have Jet McKinnon coming back, and depending on what he can do, he's that guy that can catch out of the backfield, something that Mostert may not be the best at. I think that the scheme here lends itself to keeping a fresh running back in there at all times. So even though Mostert proved himself in clutch situations and had an absolutely fantastic game in the NFC Championship, I think that we need to temper expectations that he's just all of a sudden going to break out for a 1,500-yard season.
Okay, well, you know what? I don't think he's gonna have 1,500 yards, but I do think that he tops 1,000. I don't think that Jet can be relied upon. I mean, he's been out of football for 2 whole years,
Yep.
and who knows what can. I know he's been training. I've seen the videos on social media, But we've heard every single NFL player say training is 100% different than real NFL games. You can't match the intensity, you can't match the speed. So who knows how Jet is actually going to be when he comes back. So I think Mostert, I would probably go about 1,040. I think that that's going to be a pretty good year for him, obviously a career year, but there will be Coleman, like you said. And, if they decide to bring Jeff Wilson along, which they kind of played hit with him on and off the roster last year, the pie keeps getting divvied up. But I think that the bulk share still goes to Raheem Mostert. I think he definitely proved his worth last year and earned his role as the starting running back going into next season. But I think they see more of a Tevin Coleman and more of like a goal line scenario, those types of, short distance scenarios. And Raheem Mostert, his speed, his vision, his cutting abilities, I think it's unmatched by any other running back that's on the roster right now. Now, how many running backs do you think they carry going into next year? How much is this pie going to be divided?
I think they do. I think they do 4 again. As far as like main, rotation for the backs. And I know a lot of people are like Jeff Wilson Jr., Jeff Wilson Jr. I actually think Jeff Wilson Jr. is going to get cut. I don't think that he provides enough for this team. I think that a name to look out for would be JaMycal Hasty, especially if you believe some of the more hard to say. There's some people out there in the 49ers world that just love their undrafted free agent running backs. I won't go any further than that. But you move one out, and Matt Breida, the Breida train has left town. Thank goodness. That guy was fumble prone, injury prone. Who cares? He's in Miami. Good riddance. Get out of here. I know that's going to be unpopular, but that's just how I feel. JaMycal Hasty out of Baylor is going to be the new hotness for this season. And I do think that he's going to take up that Jeff Wilson Jr. role. For whatever reason, Kyle Shanahan has a love for Tevin Coleman. And, when Coleman signed last season, I was pretty excited for it. He's done good things in Atlanta. I thought that would be a pretty good signing for them. But, it just outside of the one game where he had, I think it was the Carolina game, he just had like a monster game, one game. And, outside of that, he really didn't do anything. And it was kind of puzzling that just, everybody was hung up on who's starting. And it seemed to be Tevin Coleman was the first running back out there every time, despite Raheem Mostert just being flat out better. I think this year that kind of switches. I think Raheem Mostert is going to be running back 1 for whatever that's worth, for whatever series that's worth. But I do think that Tevin Coleman's going to take a bunch of those snaps. I do think that Jeff Wilson Jr. is going to be gone. So now you're looking at Jet McKinnon. What can he offer you? He hasn't been healthy, but that doesn't mean that he can't be healthy. Running back, as opposed to many other positions, is the one where rust is only so much as your athleticism dictates. It's not like you forget how to hit a hole. I mean, you run to daylight. You know what I mean? It's not like it's going to be a huge thing. It's not like that the halfbacks in this offense are charged with blocking too much. They do somewhat, but for the most part, it's Kyle Juszczyk back there blocking. You keep Jet out of those situations. He's going to be pretty much the third down back, so you're going to maybe have him, do a quick little block and release out to the flat to give Jimmy a safety valve. And if he can do those things, that's great. But as far as Mostert, again, 1,000 yards is a big ask out of this offense just from the scheme that they run. They want to keep backs interchangeable because as the defense gets tired, if you can put fresh legs in there, that's when you go from early in the game, we're getting 3.5 yards a carry, 3.6 yards a carry. Now all of a sudden you're getting 7 yards a carry, 7.2. You're getting those gash runs. And when you're up by a lot and you can, take the onus of the offense out of the passing game's hands, where even if you trust your quarterback to the top level extent, a passing play inherently is going to be more dangerous than a running play. That's just the way that it is, the way the mechanics work for that play. So the less that they have to throw, I think that's what Kyle kind of wants. So if you can keep the running backs fresh and keep them in and out and keep the defense guessing and keep the defense tired, I think that's what they're going to go for. So for me, 800, 900 yards tops for Raheem Mostert.
Okay. And that's a pretty good explanation, and we've seen running back by committee by Kyle Shanahan since he's been with the 49ers. But I don't know. I think that Raheem Mostert did enough to separate himself from the pack. But it's a new year, and like they say every year, every position's evaluated, and they go with the guys they feel best. Uh, will do the best for the team. Now, Matt, my question for you is, why did Raheem Mostert have a career year last year? What was it out of nowhere? He's kind of been this kind of special teamer, running back three. What was it last year that just propelled his career into, I want to say, stardom pretty much, because everybody knows who
Right.
he is after that Green Bay game in the playoffs. So what was
Exactly.
it?
I think it's one of those things where you hit the right scheme and things just start to make sense. He'd been on, I think, 5 teams in 7 years or something to that extent. He'd been on a bunch of teams, and he was able to become a special teams ace with the 49ers. Kyle kind of incorporates him into the running game, and for whatever reason, it just clicks. And Raheem Mostert, more than the other backs, showed that quick intuition to just hit the hole, that one cut, put your foot in the ground and go. And he was able to recognize and hit that hole faster than the other running backs. Tevin Coleman, to me, who everybody thought was going to be that guy, looked tentative, and he looked like he kind of pitter pattered around the hole and wasn't going through quite as quickly. I think Kyle noticed that too. Matt Breida, we know, had, he's always nicked up, and he had the fumbling issues, and that kind of put him in the doghouse. Other than that, Breida was, kind of hitting the holes in the same fashion. So Raheem Mostert, who for whatever reason, in spite of only having 8 career fumbles in 7 seasons or whatever, has kind of been labeled as fumble prone. I don't see it. He's kind of become that guy that, you hit the hole, go, and he, right at the beginning of the season, it was just 11 yards, 13 yards, he just seemed to come in and just wear people out. So I think some teams keyed on him late in the season. That brought his average down a little bit, but man, he's one of those guys where he runs 4.3 and you're just like, he doesn't look that fast, but he is that fast. So when you pair all that up, it's just like somebody gave him a chance and the scheme works for him, and he's turned it into gold, so to speak.
Yeah, and you touched on him being extremely fast. He was a track star at Purdue, which I'm sure you all know, but it really shows in this scheme, like you're saying, because Kyle Shanahan knows how to get the best out of his players. He plans things, schemes things to their strengths, does the best to kind of hide their weaknesses, and I think that's exactly what helped Raheem Mostert kind of just take off this season.
Yep.
I think it was last year that he broke his arm, or was it 2 years ago?
Yeah, it was. And it's one of those things too where it's like it's not just Kyle doing his players and like putting their players in the best position to succeed, but he also got that gift of turning, running back crap into running back success from his dad, So Mostert was able to come back from that broken arm and just took off.
Yeah, definitely. And this season, I think it was the Baltimore game where they kept just forcing Tevin Coleman in there, Tevin Coleman,
Yep.
and he wasn't getting anywhere. And then
Anything.
Raheem Mostert came in, and he just sparked that offense into a whole nother level. And it seemed like every week after that, he got better. He produced
Mhm.
more. The 49ers gave him a bigger share of the carries. And that was kind of the game, I want to say, that defined his whole season up until obviously the Packers game in the playoffs.
Yeah.
Um, Now, do you think that I don't want to say he's going to have a problem with taking a back seat, or so to speak, because he's always been not the number one guy. But do you think that there's any sort of like difference in the mindset or the drive of players when when the coaches come to you and say, look, you had the best year of your career last year. However, we really, really like these other guys. So we're going to split the carries with you a bit.
I think, and we're talking about Mostert, correct?
Correct.
I think Mostert has been through enough, has been through so many locker rooms and so many situations that he's not going to take his NFL opportunity for granted anymore. And he understands that, hey, everybody's on borrowed time in the NFL. Your next snap could be your last. You're only as good as what you've done for the team lately. Success is defined by what you're doing and not what you have done. And it's one of those things where if you're not hungry, you're going to get pushed out. And I think that he has enough struggle and experience behind him that he isn't going to take that for granted anymore. And so even if you're saying like, hey, we got these other guys that we really like, I think Raheem Mostert is going to be on board with that. The team was so close to winning it all, and I think that hunger is going to linger there. And for somebody like Mostert, who's had to scrape and claw for everything that he's gotten, I think that hunger is just going to push him further towards being, hey, I'm a team guy, whatever it takes to win, and that's how this locker room goes from Kittle, who's a superstar, on down. Everybody in the locker room kind of has that mentality of, hey, whatever it takes to win.
Yeah, that's definitely true. And it seems like most of these guys are team first kind of guys. Kyle and John said it themselves. They're looking for a certain character of a player. They're not just going by physical talent, physical traits. They want to like the actual person. And
I need Jimmy to get a better deep ball. Let's just start with that. His deep ball is garbage. Especially when you're looking outside of the hashes. He just does not throw 9 routes to outside receivers. It's just not something that he feels comfortable doing. The few times that we've seen him throw even just wheel routes or even, wide receivers that'll come across the entire formation and then sprint upfield, he underthrows those routes really badly. And then in the Super Bowl, even between the 20s, he severely overthrew that ball. I believe it was to Emmanuel Sanders in the end zone. That is just trying to block that out of my mind, but we're gonna get there. I don't know that he's going to be able to improve that much at this stage. The one area where I would like to see a big leap from Jimmy is the turnover worthy throws, and I think that's going to come this year because of a little extra experience. You hear people always say, "Hey, year 2, year 3, the game kind of slowed down for me." Well, now we're talking Jimmy G, where he's going to be essentially year 3 as far as playing goes. So those instances should kind of slow down for him, where he doesn't see, the weak side linebacker, where he doesn't see the safety creeping into the zone, and he tries to force something in there because he loves his arm maybe a little more than he should. If he can kind of come down on those things, I believe in most other areas he was an elite quarterback. So the one area where people criticize is, man, he makes some. We talk about it all the time. There's that one Jimmy G throw. You're like, oh, that's the throw. Let's hope he's done. And it's inevitable. Every week he has that one throw where you're just like, I don't know. And, you wait for something bad to happen, and it can go either way. But what you want to see out of him is better decision making. He's already proven that he's a good leader as far as his example that he sets. Now we need to see him be a leader in, like, hey, let's take care of the ball. Let's have a firm grasp on this offense. And Kyle's offense is very complicated. So this is going to be the year. This is going to be the make or break year for Jimmy Garoppolo. And if he can kind of, tune up some of those things that he's been loose on before, I think that he can be, a top 10 quarterback in the league. I think he has it in him. We need to see it, though, and we need to see it soon.
Yeah, the first you started off with his deep ball. He definitely needs to improve on that deep ball if possible. Some quarterbacks just don't have it. They don't have that accuracy. They don't have that strong of an arm. I would love to see him develop that because they now have a nice arsenal of wide receivers that they could get that ball down the field to. Brandon Ayuk specifically. I mean, he's been great with, deep passes, yards after the catch. If they just get him that ball, even 20, 30 yards down the field and let him do some damage, I think this 49ers offense takes a whole nother step into the right direction. Where I want to see him progress, and I think he will progress on, is his decision making. And you touched on a little bit there, his interception worthy throws. I think that those will get better because you've seen players talk about it in year 2, year 3, the game really slows down and it kind of, you process it at your own rate rather than the game coming to you. And you're kind of sitting there with your eyes wide open, deer in the headlights, like, oh my God. So I think that we will see this from Jimmy Garoppolo this year. Like you said, it's not technically his second year in the NFL, but it's his second full season as a starter. So it's like there's context there. It's not as black and white as, well, how many years has he actually been in? He was sitting out under Tom. He got injured. There's a lot of things there. This is his actual full second year. And what I'm going to ask you, Matt, I think is really interesting. I've seen people bring up the comparisons between Matt Ryan's first year in Kyle Shanahan's offense and Jimmy Garoppolo's first year in Kyle Shanahan's offense. We all know Matt Ryan went on to win MVP in the second year. I'm just going to list off the stats side by side. So Matt Ryan, 614 attempts, 69% completion rate, 7.5 yards per attempt, 4,500 yards, 21 touchdowns, 16 interceptions. Now, Jimmy Garoppolo, lower attempts, 456, but 66.9 completion rate, 8.3 yards per attempt, 21 touchdowns, 15 interceptions. Are we going to see an MVP like year out of Jimmy Garoppolo this season in his second year?
It's possible. And mainly it's going to be again that cutting down on the turnover worthy throws. It's one of those things where if you think about it like this, say you're trying to learn the piano, right? And the first thing that you're doing when learning the piano is, okay, this key makes this note and it's right here. This key makes this note and it's right here. And until you get those reps, you're always thinking about, man, this I need to hit this note here at this time. You hit this note here at this time. After a while, that starts slowing down. You don't think about what key plays what note. You just know that it's there and your muscle memory is there and you've kind of got a feel for it at that point. And I think that's going to be really important in Jimmy Garoppolo's development. It's one thing to be on a team and maybe getting some practice team reps, some scout team reps. I mean, looking at Tom Brady, that's great. I can watch Tom Brady film all day. That doesn't mean I'm going to be able to play quarterback like Tom Brady or diagnose a defense like Tom Brady. Until you go out there and do it, you don't know what you're capable of. So if he's going to take the step, it's going to be this season. And I do think that there is a potential for him to have a spectacular season and get the 49ers back to the Super Bowl.
Wow. Okay. I like it. I think that he will have a great year, a better year than last year, obviously. But I just think that, I mean, MVP, like, there's so many great, talented players right now.
It's tough. It's tough.
Yeah. When you're going to be ranking quarterbacks next year, where do you put him?
In the NFL?
Yeah. Starting quarterbacks.
Based off of what he did last year, probably somewhere between 10 and 20.
Okay.
I think that he's in that middle third.
I agree.
Obviously, he's good enough to get you to the Super Bowl. They got there. Is he enough to elevate your teammates to win? Last year, I don't think that he was. What you want to see out of him this year is that step to say, hey, look, I'm the man now, and I'm going to lead this team, and I'm going to be the one that's going to carry you guys instead of you guys carrying me. And I think that's an important development, because if he doesn't make that development, his cap number makes it so that they can get out from under him real quick. And there might be another starting quarterback for the 49ers in 2021 if he doesn't take that leap forward.
Right. That's a huge point, because there's so much riding on this year for him, for his career. That's why I personally think that he does take the step. I think he understands what is riding on this. And I think we've heard from all of the coaching staff how committed he is, how much he trains, how much he puts into the game. So
yeah, he's competitive. He's a competitive SOB.
Yeah. So that's what you want out of your quarterback. My question for you, you touched on it there, and even in your last answer, the team was kind of carrying him, masking his deficiencies, his weaknesses. Now, we all know great quarterbacks elevate the play of those around him. Will we be able to see that from Jimmy this year?
I think we'll see it more than we did last year. He did have some games where he made some outstanding throws, and he was able to kind of get us there. I think we'll see it more, but I do think that it's going to be a work in progress. And the one thing you want to see is progression. And if you can see him improve upon what he had, even if it's not an MVP year, you just want to see that it's better than it was. And to me, the biggest thing is those turnover worthy throws. I mean, he had so many of them that if you can cut down on those just by default, it's going to be so much better for the team, without having to go cover your eyes every time he throws a football. So
yeah. And also
I think he'll be better, but the turnover worthy throws is where it's going to be at.
And also, drafting a wide receiver in the first round, they're doing all they can to make him better, to help him out. I mean, last year, how many of his interceptions were due to tipped balls, were due to receivers bobbling it and dropping it? Like a good amount of those interceptions could have been reduced. I want to say at least 5. If the wide receivers just held on to the ball.
Yeah, to be fair, to combat that, I will say that there were other throws that the defenders dropped that could have been interceptions.
That's a good point. That's a good point as well.
You want to see those cleaned up.
Yeah.
He had some where you're just like, oh man, he is so lucky right now. So it's the easy thing is to say, oh, the Pittsburgh game, wow, they had 5 turnovers because XYZ. Dante Pettis tipped the ball and Matt Breida, juggled the ball into the opponent's hands. But at the same time, there's plenty of throws that Jimmy makes on his own that you're just like, whoa, that's bad. And he gets lucky sometimes. And what we want to do is cut down on the percentage of those throws that he's trying to force in there. It's easier to make a quarterback kind of rein it in a little bit from being a gunslinger than it is from getting a timid quarterback to kind of open it up. And so you want your quarterback to be a little bit more on the aggressive side, but you also have to take into account, hey, you can't always be forcing it into that area.
Matt, who do you have at the top?
49ers, very easy, especially with Todd Gurley leaving. You're looking at a guy, Raheem Mostert, who is on the come up. He's going to get a lot of carries. Tevin Coleman right behind him. Whether you think he was effective or not, he's a good 2. Depending on what Jet McKinnon can give you. I mean, again, these are all running backs that you've heard of, that you know of, that can potentially make an impact. And for me, that just makes the 49ers the best group. Number 2, I'd have to go with Seattle, although begrudgingly. I think Carson is a really good running back. They way overdrafted Rashawn Penny, who looks to be their number 2. Both those guys are coming off of injuries, so we're going to see how they're going to do. But they kind of take a little bit of the load off of Russell Wilson, and I think they're number 2. Number 3 for me is the Arizona Cardinals, and for me, Kenyon Drake came on and looked really impressive after the trade from Miami. He signs a deal there, so he stays. But beyond that, they don't really have a lot. And then last but certainly least is the Los Angeles Rams. Todd Gurley is out of town. They drafted a guy, Cam Akers. Maybe he'll be good. Maybe he won't be. I don't know enough about him to know. Everybody else are people that we've never heard of. So for me, it's 49ers 1, Seahawks 2, Cardinals 3, Rams 4. How about you?
I like that. To be honest with you, if it wasn't for Kenyon Drake, you could kind of interchange the Cardinals and Rams without much. I know the Rams, like you said, took a running back this year, Cam Akers, and he's an unknown. I know the running back position kind of translates well pretty early on in the NFL from college NFL, but still, bigger guys, tougher, faster, stronger. So that remains to be seen how he's going to play out. I think the 49ers do have the best position group out of the conference, and they've kind of just been hitting on most of I say a high percentage of their undrafted free agents stick on this roster. And it's kind of crazy because they brought back the majority of their roster from making the Super Bowl. And we got a guy like, Hasty. People are talking about him like he could really stick and do some damage on this roster. Now, my question for you, Matt, is if he somehow doesn't make this team, are the other 3 teams in this division going to be rushing to sign him?
I don't think that they'd be rushing to sign him per se. I think that he would probably make a roster. I mean, running backs are so interchangeable that if you get rid of one, you get rid of another. Hasty, to me, kind of embodies their love of undrafted free agents. You look back at Matt Breida, you look back at some other guys, and you just see that Kyle loves finding that diamond in the rough, and Breida was a really good find for them in their first season here, to be able to pull him off the pile and say, hey, look, this is a guy that we can get behind, is important. So to me, the signing of JaMycal Hasty, who may or may not turn into something, is just one of those things where it makes sense for the team to kind of like see what they can polish. He seems to be a player of a style that Kyle sort of likes, and so we'll see where it goes.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I could see that. He could land on this roster and stick. I know you said in a previous video you don't think Jeff Wilson makes this spot, the roster. Hasty could fill that void if they choose to roll with him. You touched on Kenyon Drake of the Arizona Cardinals and how he kind of hit the ground running on that Halloween game, first time with the game, or excuse me, with the team. Is he going to be the lead back for the Cardinals going into the season?
Yeah, I mean, de facto, he's going to be the lead back. It seems like everybody who leaves that black hole in Miami kind of becomes, it's like a breath of fresh air. And that's not really fair to Coach Flores and the rest of the team because they played really hard for him. I think that Drake had been there through the Adam Gase years and was just kind of like burnt on Miami. And I think the change of scenery really, really did him good. So, you give Kyler Murray somebody who can take the pressure off, somebody who can be reliable. Kenyon Drake is fast. I think he's going to be the lead back there this year for sure.
Okay. I could see that. And the 49ers definitely had trouble containing him. He's a fast guy. He was able
Mhm.
to break through tackles. He played the 49ers really, really well.
Yep.
Now, when you're facing each NFC West opponent, which running back is the one running back that you are most worried about?
For some reason, it seems to be Chris Carson who just shakes loose a little bit. And I think that's because the defense is so focused on stopping Russell Wilson or at least slowing him down. You kind of forget, the Seahawks offensive line has been nothing to write home about. And it seems that in non NFC West games, Chris Carson will disappear for stretches. He'll have a game where he has like 13 carries for 46 yards, right? As soon as he plays the 49ers, it's like 16 carries for 128 yards and a touchdown. Just something about the Seahawks playing the 49ers where the 49ers are so worried about Russell Wilson and what he can do. We forget about Carson. And before we know it, Carson has gashed us up and down the field and has made us mincemeat. And the defense is tired. And so they're not looking to hit anymore, whatever. And so for me, Carson is that one running back where you're just like, man, he came out of nowhere. He's not even having a great season, but for whatever reason, he always plays the 49ers tough.
Yeah, he played the 49ers really well last year when he was healthy and years prior. Um, the thing that it's kind of a joking question, but it's serious. What are the Rams doing at this position?
No one knows. I think they're trying to replace Todd Gurley, but at the same time, it was just like, they gave Gurley this massive extension that everybody was like, look, his knee. I mean, even that time they signed it, everybody was like, hey man, there's something going on with his knee. And we don't know what it is, but there's something there. And it was one of those things where they just did it anyway. And so for me, I think general manager Les Snead, for whatever reason, values running backs, and he thinks they're really important. In spite of the fact that it looks like McVay is not on the same page with Snead, and they're having a little lovers quarrel. Snead seems to really like his running backs, so they definitely kind of stretched their arm out there and took Cam Akers, which I believe at the time J.K. Dobbins was still on the board when they took Akers, which to me was just like it was a puzzling move, and it could turn out to bear fruit. Maybe it won't. They have a couple other guys on their roster that have played, but it's just another notch in the belt of ineptitude for the Los Angeles Rams, who seem to be on a steep decline.
What a great way to put it. We both agree on the rankings. 49ers, Seahawks, Cardinals, and then Rams. How far ahead is the gap between the 49ers and then the rest of the division?
It's a large gap, and I'll tell you why in 2 words. Kyle Juszczyk.
Right.
People forget about Kyle Juszczyk. He is a all-pro, all-world fullback, and Kyle makes use of Kyle in ways that no other team can make use of their fullbacks. He is such an integral part, and you see it all the time, whether he's blocking Jimmy G's blindside or getting out there and dribbling Minkah Fitzpatrick like a basketball. He just makes plays. He's out there. He is the offensive weapon that the 49ers need. And you could see a little bit of the drop off in creative play calling when he got injured, and you just that alone, him alone, the 49ers without him are above everybody else. With him, it's icing on the cake, and they're just that much better.
That's a good point. Kyle Juszczyk, the offense was completely different with him on the field. Once he got injured, it kind of, like you said, slowed down a bit, took a step back. And then once he came back, they got going right back up to speed. Why do so few teams, I know this is specific to the NFC West, but I've always wondered, why is the fullback position just kind of fading into dust?
More teams are running the spread offenses, the RPO stuff, and the fullback is just kind of a relic of a bygone era for a lot of those teams in those positions. And I think that, for the most part, it makes sense. But for this team, Kyle seems to like his fullbacks. So, and it works, and they got the best one in the league in Kyle Juszczyk, and he makes the best use of him possible. I think for a lot of other teams, it's like, well, we can kind of use, if we want to motion a tight end into that fullback spot and use them there, we can kind of do that. But, for Kyle Juszczyk in this offense, Kyle uses him everywhere else. It's one of those get everybody out on the perimeter, make as much space and mismatch as possible. Who cares about a blocking running back? But the 49ers are showing that the fullback position in particular is not dead yet.
Okay, that's a good explanation. The NFL seems to be getting faster, slower, stronger guys on offense. They're not really as needed. But in this offense specifically, I mean, you heard Kyle Shanahan when he signed Kyle Juszczyk, he handpicked him. I mean, it seemed like he was a guy he was watching for a while. He kind of had on his checklist of players that they needed specifically, and I believe he went to Harvard, right? Very, very smart guy. So he's just perfect for this offense. Now, my last question for you: we're ranking NFC West running backs here. Where would you rank the running schemes?
Again, 49ers first. And that's because, I mean, the pedigree is there, and not just with Kyle, with his father. He comes from a long line of people who know how to get everything out of their running backs. You go back to Mike Shanahan in Denver, and he just had so many 1,000-yard backs, whether it was Terrell Davis, whether it was Clinton Portis, whether it was guys, who you don't even remember right now. There was a bunch of them though. And it's one of those things where Kyle has kind of picked that up from his dad. And so they're at the top. I think the second best running scheme for me would actually be the Rams. I do like what Sean McVay does with the running backs. I do think that they run so much out of their 11 personnel that I think that if you have a good running back that can run in that scheme, it just helps everything. It helps sell play fakes. It helps sell Jared Goff's rollouts. And you could see that this year when Todd Gurley wasn't effective anymore, how much that affected Jared Goff. Whereas the year before, he was in conversations as a top 5 MVP guy. You're talking about him this year where everybody's like, oh man, they made such mistakes giving Jared Goff that money, not realizing that he still threw for 4,600 yards, not realizing, I mean, he had a few more turnovers, but he's still a 65% completion guy, 4,600 yards. He's still making throws. You just see a little bit of the luster taken off when you don't have that running game. Third for me is going to be the Cardinals. And that is because I think that Kingsbury has a very interesting offensive system. And I think that when you pair that with Kyler Murray, that's going to make some, really dynamic holes for the running backs. And last for me is Seattle. Man, they just don't do a lot with their running backs. Pete Carroll has only had great running games when Marshawn Lynch was back there. And I think that just shows that it's a lot more Marshawn Lynch than it was Pete Carroll. So for me, to draft a guy like Rashawn Penny in the first round and have him be almost nothing. I mean, he hasn't really done anything. To have Chris Carson only show up in division games where it's super important, but really kind of disappear outside of that. I mean, it's just it's not, to me, it's not a good system for running backs. It's predicated on let's get Russell Wilson out in space and get him to pass the ball. But beyond that, they run the ball for a low percentage of yardage, and they just keep doing it. It's almost like Pete Carroll doesn't realize he has a Russell Wilson at times, and you should be kind of trying to open up the game for him. And they kind of try to do that without trying to do that, if that makes sense. So to me, the running backs in Seattle have a raw deal because that scheme is not good for them.
Yeah, and like you said, when Marshawn Lynch was there, their running game was top notch. They were always, one of the leading rushing teams, so they have definitely fallen far. I think you mentioned earlier, Seattle uses their running game kind of to complement Russell Wilson, and it's so effective because defenses are so afraid that Russell Wilson is going to keep it, he's going to take off, whatever it may be. I think we could see a little bit of that with Arizona this year. I think Kyler Murray is dangerous in space with the ball. He's shifty, little quick guy, man. He's hard to get down. I know he took a lot of sacks last year, but it takes a lot of effort for defenses to actually get him down. He looks like he's like slippery, like he's up there lathered in oil. Guys are just bouncing right off, slipping off of him. So I think we could definitely see that sort of style from the Cardinals this upcoming season. That's going to do it for us today, guys. Thanks for tuning in to Niners News. Make sure you follow us on Twitter. Our handles are below. Also, comment your thoughts below. Do you think that how do the running backs rank the NFC West to you. Do you think the 49ers are clear and cut the best running back group in the division? Or who do you think is number one if not? And also make sure you guys subscribe, turn on all notifications. Once we reach 250 subscribers, we will be giving away a 49ers jersey. You do not want to miss out. And make sure you check out 49ershive.com. Hit the Shop 49ers Hive tab. And we do have our Come At Me Bro t-shirt right now. Use code JS74 for 15% off your purchase. All pre-orders get free shipping in the U.S. Thanks for tuning in, guys.